10 things to tell yourself every day. Not once, not when things get hard, but daily. The way you brush your teeth, the way you check the weather before you walk out the door. Because the truth is, your mind is going to talk to you all day long, whether you direct it or not. The only real question is whether you're going to leave that conversation to chance, or whether you're going to decide on purpose what gets said. Most people never make that decision. They wake up and let the first anxious thought of the day set the tone for everything that follows. They let a bad night's sleep, an unread text, a headline they glanced at for 4 seconds, become the voice running the show. And then they wonder, at the end of another exhausting week, why they feel like they're being dragged through their own life instead of living it. The Stoics understood something almost 2,000 years before modern psychology caught up to it, that the sentences you repeat to yourself quietly, privately, over and over, are not neutral. They are not just commentary on your life. They are, in a very real sense, building it. Marcus Aurelius wrote an entire private journal made almost entirely of sentences like the ones we're about to walk through. Reminders, arguments with himself, phrases he needed to hear again and again because he knew, better than almost anyone in history, how easily a mind left unattended drifts somewhere you didn't choose to go. Today, 10 of those sentences. Not affirmations in the flimsy, feel-good sense. Nothing here is about pretending things are fine when they're not. These are working tools tested by people who used them to survive slavery, exile, plague, grief, and the daily grind of an empire that never stopped demanding something from them. 10 things to actually say to yourself every day, and exactly why each one works. If you've ever wished you had better control over the voice in your own head, this video is for you. Stay until the end. And if this channel has been useful to you, take a second now to subscribe. It genuinely helps more people find exactly this kind of video when they need it most. Think for a second about how many thousands of sentences your mind will generate today without any input from you at all. Most of them will go completely unnoticed, background noise gone the moment they arrive, but some of them will stick. Some of them, said enough times, on enough ordinary mornings, become the lens you see your entire life through, without you ever consciously choosing them, without you ever once asking whether they're actually true. That's the gap we're closing today. Not by silencing the mind, which isn't possible and was never the goal. By making sure that at least some of what fills that space is something you actually chose, on purpose. Because it's true, and because it serves you, instead of leaving the whole job to whatever anxious or critical thought happens to show up first. Let's begin. Before the first sentence, here's something worth understanding clearly, because it changes how you'll use everything that follows. These 10 things are not magic words. Saying them once will not fix a bad day. That's not how any of this works, and if a video promises you otherwise, it's lying to you. What actually works is repetition. Saying the same true thing to yourself so many times that it eventually becomes the automatic response, instead of something you have to consciously remember to reach for. Epictetus taught his students that philosophy wasn't a subject you studied once and understood. It was a discipline you practiced daily, the way an athlete trains a muscle that will atrophy the moment they stop showing up. He told them, "It is the act of an ill-instructed man to blame others for his own bad condition. It is the act of one who has begun to be instructed to lay the blame on himself, and of one whose instruction is completed neither to blame another nor himself." That's a process, not a switch. 3 stages, and most people spend their entire lives stuck somewhere in the first one, blaming everything outside themselves for how they feel. These 10 daily sentences are the practice that moves you through those stages, not overnight, but the same way every genuine skill gets built, through repetition that eventually becomes who you are, instead of something you're trying to remember to do. One more thing worth saying before we start. You will say some of these sentences on days when you don't fully believe them. That's fine. That's normal, and it's not a sign you're doing it wrong. The sentence doesn't need your full belief the first 100 times you say it. It just needs your repetition. Belief tends to follow practice, not the other way around, which is honestly good news because it means you don't have to wait until you feel ready to start. You just have to start saying it. 10 things. Let's go through them one at a time. 1. I do not control what happens. I only control how I respond. Imagine a woman named Lucinda, 41, an ER physician in Phoenix, whose job hands her on a near-daily basis, situations completely outside her control. Traffic that delays a critical transfer, a patient's family making choices she disagrees with, outcomes that no amount of skill or effort could have changed. For years, she carried every one of those uncontrollable outcomes home with her, replaying them, torturing herself over things that were never hers to control in the first place. A colleague, watching her burn out slowly over several years, finally said something that landed differently than any of the wellness seminars the hospital had sent her to. He told her he'd started saying one sentence to himself, silently, every time a shift handed him something outside his control. I don't control this. I only control what I do next, not as a way of not caring, as a way of directing his energy toward the only place it could actually do any good. This is the oldest and most foundational idea in all of Stoic philosophy, and it comes most directly from Epictetus, a man who had about as little external control over his own life as it was possible for a human being to have. Born into slavery, his body legally the property of another man, Epictetus built an entire philosophy around a single radical claim. Some things are in our control, and others are not. In our control are opinion, aim, desire, and aversion. Not in our control are body, property, reputation, and command. If a man who could be beaten, sold, or silenced at another person's whim could hold on to that distinction, it's worth asking what excuse the rest of us have for constantly forgetting it. Lucinda started saying the sentence at the start of every shift, and again, silently, every time something outside her control tried to hijack her attention. It didn't make the hard outcomes disappear. It changed measurably how much of her actual energy she spent fighting things that were never going to move. Say this one every morning before you even check your phone. I do not control what happens today. I only control how I respond to it. It will not stop hard things from happening. It will change how much of yourself you lose to the things you were never going to be able to change anyway. Lucinda told a version of this story to a newer resident years later, who was struggling with the exact same pattern she used to fall into. What she told him was that the sentence doesn't work like a switch you flip once and forget. Some shifts, the uncontrollable thing is so large, so genuinely devastating, that the sentence barely makes a dent the first few times you say it. That's fine, you say it anyway. Not because it fixes the feeling instantly, but because it's the thing pulling you, slowly, back toward the only place your energy was ever going to do any good. This too will pass, the good and the bad alike. Now meet a man named Bertrand, 60, recently retired, who spent much of his 50s gripped by a strange kind of anxiety he could never quite name, a background hum of dread that things were going too well, that the good stretch he was in couldn't possibly last, and that something was surely coming to take it away. What eventually helped Bertrand wasn't reassurance that things would stay good. It was the opposite. A full, honest acceptance that nothing, good or bad, was ever going to stay exactly as it was. Once he stopped fighting that fact, the dread underneath his good moments started to loosen, because he wasn't secretly bracing for the loss of something he'd finally accepted was never permanent to begin with. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the constant motion of everything around him with a clarity that reads almost like a direct answer to Bertrand's anxiety, ruling as he did over an empire in constant flux, plagues arriving and receding, wars starting and ending, alliances shifting under him without warning. Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things which are and to make new things like them. That's not a bleak observation. It's closer to relief if you actually let it land. The hard season you're in right now is not permanent. Neither is the good one. Everything is always moving, always becoming something else, and once you stop expecting anything to hold still, you stop being ambushed every time it doesn't. It's worth noticing how differently this sentence lands depending on which day you say it. On a hard day, it functions almost like a hand on the shoulder, a reminder that the current weight isn't the permanent shape of your life. On a good day, it functions more like an invitation, a nudge to actually notice and appreciate what's in front of you instead of taking it for granted or bracing against its eventual end. Same 6 words, doing 2 completely different jobs depending on what you actually need from them that morning. Say this daily, especially on the days that feel unbearable and the days that feel almost too good to trust. This too will pass, the good and the bad alike. It's not resignation. It's the truest thing you can say about any single day of your life. There's a specific kind of relief in this one that people don't expect until they actually try it. Bertrand described it as finally being allowed to enjoy something without the constant background calculation of when it might end. He hadn't realized how much energy that calculation had been quietly draining every single day until he stopped doing it. The good stretch didn't need protecting from the passage of time, it just needed to be lived in fully for as long as it lasted, which it turns out was most of what he'd been missing about it in the first place. 3. I could leave this life right now. Imagine a woman named Faye, 35, a graphic designer in Portland who spent a decade putting off the things that actually mattered to her, a novel she wanted to write, a friendship she'd let go cold, a conversation with her father she kept telling herself there would be time for later. Later always felt available. Later, by definition, never runs out, until for someone, it does. Faye's shift came after a friend her own age died suddenly, unexpectedly, in a way that offered no warning at all. In the weeks afterward, Faye found herself doing something she'd never done before, actually sitting with the fact that she too was not guaranteed a single one of the later days she'd been quietly stockpiling her whole life. Marcus Aurelius carried this awareness with him constantly, not as morbidity, but as clarity. Writing from military camps, surrounded by death on a scale most of us will never witness, he reminded himself. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This is not meant to frighten you into paralysis. It's meant to do the opposite, to burn away the noise, the procrastination. The assumption that you have unlimited later days to finally say the thing, finally start the thing, finally repair the thing. You might. Most days, statistically, you will. But the sentence isn't about statistics. It's about living like today actually matters, because it might, in fact, be the only guarantee you get. Say this daily, ideally in the morning, before the noise of the day convinces you that everything can wait. I could leave this life right now. Let that decide what I do today. Faye eventually made the call to her father, the one she'd been putting off for years, about 6 weeks after her friend's death. She said it wasn't a dramatic, tearful reconciliation. It was mostly ordinary, a little awkward, exactly the kind of unremarkable conversation she'd been avoiding for no real reason at all. What struck her afterward wasn't the conversation itself. It was how easy it had actually been once she stopped treating later as a guaranteed resource she was entitled to. 4. What stands in my way is also my way forward. Now meet a man named Solomon, 48, whose small manufacturing business was nearly destroyed by a supply chain collapse that, for almost a year, threatened to take everything he'd built over 2 decades. For months, he treated the crisis purely as an obstacle, something blocking the business he was supposed to be running, something he needed to survive and get past so his real work could resume. The shift for Solomon came slowly, almost accidentally, when a mentor pointed out that the entire skill set Solomon had developed in surviving that year, the improvising, the new supplier relationships, the leaner operations he'd been forced to build, had actually made his company stronger than it had been before the crisis started. The obstacle hadn't been standing between him and his real work. For that entire year, it had been his real work. This idea comes from the single most quoted line in all of Stoic philosophy, written by Marcus Aurelius in his private journal. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. It's a strange, almost paradoxical claim the first time you hear it, but it holds up under nearly any test you throw at it. The obstacle in front of you right now is not a detour from your real life. It is, whether you like it or not, the actual material your life is currently made of. Treating it as an interruption just adds suffering on top of difficulty. Treating it as the way forward doesn't make it easier exactly, but it stops the wasted energy of resenting the very thing you have no choice but to work through anyway. There's an important honesty required here too. This isn't a claim that every obstacle secretly contains a hidden silver lining, or that everything happens for some cosmic reason. Marcus Aurelius wasn't a naive optimist. He watched an empire nearly collapse under him more than once. The claim is narrower and more useful than that. It's simply that your energy is better spent working with what's actually in front of you than spent wishing it weren't there at all, because the wishing changes nothing except how exhausted you feel while you're dealing with it anyway. Say this daily, especially when something is currently blocking the plan you had. What stands in my way is also my way forward. It is not a detour. It is right now the actual path. Solomon started using the sentence on smaller obstacles too, once he noticed how well it worked on the large one. A client cancellation, a shipment delay, a difficult conversation with an employee he'd been avoiding. Each time, the sentence didn't make the obstacle smaller. What it did was stop the extra layer of resentment he used to add on top of every difficulty, the sense that this shouldn't be happening, that it was somehow unfair for the obstacle to exist at all. Once that layer dropped away, what remained was just the actual problem, which was almost always more manageable than the resentment had made it feel. 5. Other people's opinions of me are not my business. Imagine a woman named Aurelius, 29, a first-year associate at a competitive law firm in New York, who spent her entire first year quietly terrified of what every senior partner thought of her, replaying offhand comments, overanalyzing tone in emails, losing entire evenings to anxiety about impressions she couldn't actually verify and, in most cases, probably didn't even exist the way she imagined them. What finally helped Aurelius wasn't becoming indifferent to feedback. She still cared genuinely about doing good work. What helped was separating actual direct feedback from the imagined opinions she'd been constructing entirely inside her own head, based on nothing more solid than a neutral expression or a slightly short email. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this exact trap repeatedly, ruling as he did in a court full of people whose opinions could have consumed his entire attention if he'd let them. How much trouble he avoids, who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does, but only what he does himself, to make it just and pure. Other people's opinions of you exist entirely inside their own heads, filtered through their own moods, their own insecurities, their own unrelated bad days. You are not responsible for managing that. You were never responsible for that. You are responsible for one thing only: whether you can respect the person you're being regardless of who's watching or what they conclude about it. Say this daily, and especially before you check an email or a message you're bracing for. Other people's opinions of me are not my business. My business is only whether I can respect what I did today. Aurelius started noticing, once she applied this daily, how much of her anxiety had actually been about opinions that didn't exist yet, imagined reactions to work she hadn't even submitted, feedback she was bracing for before anyone had said a single word. The sentence didn't erase her nerves entirely. What it did was give her something to say back to the anxious spiral the moment it started, instead of letting it run uninterrupted for hours the way it used to. Kewester, I have everything I actually need to handle this. Imagine a woman named Genevieve, 57, recently widowed, who spent the first months after her husband's death convinced, in a very literal and specific way, that she did not have what it took to manage everything he used to handle: the finances, the house, decisions she'd never had to make alone in 31 years of marriage. What helped Genevieve slowly was not a single moment of sudden confidence. It was noticing week after week that she was, in fact, handling it, imperfectly, exhaustingly, but handling it, one decision at a time, in a way that quietly contradicted the story she'd been telling herself about her own capability. Epictetus taught something directly relevant here, having built an entire life and an entire teaching career out of resources that looked, from the outside, like almost nothing at all. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Genevieve wasn't given a manual for widowhood or a guarantee that she'd get everything right. What she had the entire time was the same thing every person facing something enormous actually has: the capacity to make the next decision and then the one after that, which turns out almost every time to be enough, even when it doesn't feel like enough in the moment. Say this daily, especially on the days that feel like too much. I have everything I actually need to handle this. Not everything I'd like. Everything I need. There's an important distinction buried in that sentence that's worth pulling out explicitly, because it's easy to hear it as false confidence. It isn't a claim that you'll handle everything perfectly or painlessly or without help from anyone else. Genevieve asked her son for help with the finances more than once, and that didn't contradict the sentence at all. Asking for the right help at the right time is often exactly what having what you need actually looks like in practice. The sentence isn't about doing it alone. It's about trusting that you're not as unequipped as the fear in the moment insists you are. 7. I have everything I actually need to handle this. Imagine a woman named Genevieve, 57, recently widowed, who spent the first months after her husband's death convinced, in a very literal and specific way, that she did not have what it took to manage everything he used to handle. The finances, the house, decisions she'd never had to make alone in 31 years of marriage. What helped Genevieve, slowly, was not a single moment of sudden confidence. It was noticing week after week that she was in fact handling it, imperfectly, exhaustingly, but handling it, one decision at a time, in a way that quietly contradicted the story she'd been telling herself about her own capability. Epictetus taught something directly relevant here, having built an entire life and an entire teaching career out of resources that looked, from the outside, like almost nothing at all. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Genevieve wasn't given a manual for widowhood or a guarantee that she'd get everything right. What she had the entire time was the same thing every person facing something enormous actually has: the capacity to make the next decision and then the one after that, which turns out almost every time to be enough, even when it doesn't feel like enough in the moment. Say this daily, especially on the days that feel like too much. I have everything I actually need to handle this. Not everything I'd like. Everything I need. There's an important distinction buried in that sentence that's worth pulling out explicitly, because it's easy to hear it as false confidence. It isn't a claim that you'll handle everything perfectly or painlessly or without help from anyone else. Genevieve asked her son for help with the finances more than once, and that didn't contradict the sentence at all. Asking for the right help at the right time is often exactly what having what you need actually looks like in practice. The sentence isn't about doing it alone. It's about trusting that you're not as unequipped as the fear in the moment insists you are. 8. Nothing can disturb me without my own consent. Now meet a man named Cyrus, 38, an air traffic controller in Chicago, whose job requires an almost inhuman level of composure under pressure in an environment where a single mistake carries stakes most professions never have to consider. Colleagues often ask him how he manages the stress of the job without it consuming his personal life, the way it consumes so many others in the same profession. His answer, when pressed, always comes back to something he learned years ago and has repeated to himself daily ever since: that an event in itself has no power over him until he decides internally to hand that power over. A chaotic shift is chaotic. It is not automatically also devastating unless he adds that judgment on top of it himself. Epictetus put this as plainly as it has ever been put in the line that opens nearly every serious introduction to Stoic philosophy. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things. This is not a claim that nothing bad ever happens, or that your feelings aren't real. It's a claim about where the disturbance actually originates, not in the event itself, but in the judgment layered on top of it, a judgment that, unlike the event, is always entirely yours to examine and, if necessary, revise. This is, without question, the hardest of the 10 to actually practice, and it deserves to be said plainly rather than glossed over. In the moment, something genuinely difficult happens. The idea that you have any say at all in your own disturbance can feel almost insulting, like being told your pain is somehow optional. It isn't optional in that sense. What Epictetus is pointing at is subtler and slower than that. It's not that you can switch off pain by deciding to. It's that, given enough practice, you get better at noticing the extra layer your mind adds on top of the pain, the catastrophizing, the story about what it means, the assumption that it will never get better. And that extra layer, unlike the pain itself, genuinely is yours to work with. Say this daily, and especially in the middle of anything genuinely stressful: nothing can disturb me without my own consent. The event is just the event. What I add to it is up to me. Cyrus was careful when he explained this to colleagues, to distinguish it from suppression. He wasn't pretending the stress of the job wasn't real, or forcing himself to feel calm when he didn't. What he'd actually built was a habit of noticing the exact moment a judgment attached itself to an event. This is a disaster. I can't handle this. And asking, in that specific moment, whether the judgment was actually true or just the first thing his mind had reached for under pressure. More often than not, once he looked directly at it, the judgment didn't hold up nearly as well as the event itself did. 9. I am grateful for what I have, not grieving what I lack. Imagine a woman named Marguerite, 63, whose adult children live across the country and rarely visit, who spent years quietly resentful of the distance, comparing her own scattered family to friends whose grown children lived nearby and gathered every Sunday. What eventually shifted for Marguerite wasn't the distance closing. Her children's lives were built where they were, and that wasn't going to change. What shifted was where she put her attention. Instead of cataloging what her family life lacked compared to some imagined ideal, she started, deliberately, cataloging what was actually present. The calls that did happen, the visits that did occur, the specific and real relationships she had, rather than the ones she'd constructed in comparison to somebody else's Sunday dinner table. Epictetus taught this distinction as one of the central disciplines of a well-lived life, having spent much of his own life with almost nothing by conventional standards, and having built, out of that scarcity, one of the most contented and respected lives of his era. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. Marguerite began keeping a short, specific list each week, not vague gratitude, but exact details. The particular thing her daughter said on their Tuesday call, the specific joke her son sent that made her laugh out loud alone in her kitchen. The comparison to other families' Sunday dinners started to matter less, not because her situation changed, but because her attention had somewhere real and specific to land instead. Say this daily and be specific about it. I am grateful for what I actually have, not grieving what I don't. Name the real thing, not the vague feeling. Specificity is what makes it work. Marguerite said the specificity was the part that actually made the difference more than the gratitude itself. She'd tried, years earlier, a vaguer version of gratitude practice, just generally being thankful, and it hadn't moved much for her. What changed things was naming one exact detail each day, something small enough to be real instead of abstract enough to feel hollow. The exactness was what kept her attention from drifting back to the comparison she used to make with other families' Sunday tables. 10. I will not waste this day. Finally, there is a man named Rutherford, 71, a retired shipbuilder who spent his final working decade watching colleagues, one after another, delay the things they actually wanted to do, travel, hobbies, time with grandchildren, until retirement, a date some of them never actually reached. Rutherford made a decision in his 50s that reshaped the rest of his life. He stopped treating his current years as a waiting room for some better, more available future version of himself, and started asking, every single morning, a single blunt question. If this were one of my last days, would I be spending it this way? Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius about the specific common tragedy of people who postpone actually living until some future date that keeps receding further away, put it about as directly as it's ever been put. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Life is long enough, and a sufficiently generous amount has been given to us for the highest achievements if it were all well invested. Rutherford's daily sentence became simple, and he said it out loud most mornings, standing in his own kitchen before anyone else was awake. I will not waste this day. Not because every day needed to be extraordinary, because ordinary days, spent attentively instead of postponed indefinitely, turned out to be where almost all of an actual life takes place. Say this daily, and mean it as a decision, not a hope. I will not waste this day. There is no version of your life where this particular day comes back around for a second try. Rutherford's grandchildren, he says now, are the ones who noticed the difference first, not because he said the sentence out loud to them, but because of what it changed about how he showed up. He stopped saying next time about things he could do right now. A walk, a phone call, an afternoon with nothing scheduled at all. The sentence didn't add extraordinary things to his life. It just stopped him from postponing the ordinary ones indefinitely, which turned out to be most of what he'd actually been missing. We started today with a simple observation that your mind is talking to you constantly, whether you direct that conversation or not, and that the sentences you repeat to yourself are not neutral. They are quietly building the life you're living, one repetition at a time. 10 sentences, and by now you have all of them. I do not control what happens, only how I respond. This too will pass, the good and the bad alike. I could leave this life right now, so let that decide what I do today. What stands in my way is also my way forward. Other people's opinions of me are not my business. Today I will meet difficult people, and I will not let them decide my day. I have everything I actually need to handle this. Nothing can disturb me without my own consent. I am grateful for what I have, not grieving what I lack, and I will not waste this day. You don't need to say all 10 every single morning starting tomorrow. That's not realistic, and trying to force it usually collapses within a week. Pick one, the one that felt, while you were listening, like it was speaking directly to something you've been struggling with, and say that one sentence every single day for the next 30 days. Out loud if you can manage it, silently if you can't. Let it become automatic before you add a second one. Marcus Aurelius wrote his entire private journal this way. Not a finished philosophy delivered once and never revisited, but the same handful of ideas returned to again and again because he understood something true about how a human mind actually changes. It doesn't change because you heard something once. It changes because you kept telling yourself the truth patiently on the ordinary days, until the truth became the voice that was actually running things. He left behind a line that captures the entire spirit of everything in this video, better than any summary I could offer. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That power was always there. These 10 sentences are simply how you start actually using it. Every single day, starting with the very next morning you wake up. One last thing before we close. Every person in this video, Lucinda, Bertrand, Faye, Solomon, Aurelius, Preston, Genevieve, Cyrus, Marguerite, Rutherford, started exactly where you're starting right now, saying a sentence they weren't fully sure would work on an ordinary day that didn't feel especially significant. None of them had a dramatic breakthrough moment where everything suddenly clicked. What they had was the willingness to keep saying the true thing, quietly, every day, long enough for it to stop being something they were practicing and start being simply who they were. That's available to you starting tomorrow morning, not someday, tomorrow. If this gave you something worth carrying into tomorrow, subscribe so the next one finds you, and tell me in the comments which of these 10 sentences you're starting with. I read everyone, and it helps this reach the next person who needs exactly this today. Take care of your mind. The world will take care of itself. Until next time.